Greetings and welcome to another video. Now this one's going to be a little bit off the cuff. I haven't practiced and rehearsed this one to death, mainly because I want to leave open the possibilities of making a couple of mistakes due to being distracted, because it's kind of common until you get used to source control to make some mistakes when working with it. So I just want to leave that possibility open. So apologies if this is a little bit rough. Like I said, I didn't want to rehearse this one too much. All right. Getting your code into your repository. This is necessary for turning in your assignments, so we need to get this going. Now, I am assuming you guys have already created a repository. If you have not already created a repository, that is the first thing you need to do. You need to go to code.google.com, signed in with your StuMail account, and you need to create a project. You need to give it a project name, summary, description, and you want a subversion control system. The license is up to you. I recommend an MIT license. Yes, that does make your code open source. As long as you do not share your project folder name with your fellow students, and you don't share your you don't share your login name with them, your fellow students aren't going to be able to find your project. Even if they do, don't go looking for your fellow students' projects. All right, guys? I can tell when it's been copied. Code reads like English to me. I can see individual styles. Don't do it. And, of course, you can give it labels if you so desire. I'm not going to hit the Create Project button because you do have a limited number of projects you can create through Google Code. What I would recommend is creating a single repository, game 1 projects, or even just game projects, that you put all of your folders into, all of your various sub-projects into. It's a little bit cleaner on the organization, and like I said, you do have a limited number of these you can create, so this way you just create one repository for the class. Upon doing that, you will have your repository set up and ready to check things in. Now, what I'm going to be checking in for this demo is the class design demo code that I showed in an earlier video. Now, I'm going to do something on this first that's sort of unique to Visual Studio projects. I'm going to clean the build. When you have a Visual Studio project, a lot of temporary files get generated. When you do a build and run the compiler on it, you're generating the executable, all sorts of temporary files. You don't want to put those in source control. As best as possible, you want to keep text in the source control. That is what it's most efficient in dealing with. So I'm going to go to Build and Clean Solution. It's not necessary, it's just a really good idea when working with Visual Studio projects. Granted, the only Visual Studio project you'll be working with is the tree data structure, but it's good to know. Unfortunately, with Unity, there is no such equivalent. You just got to deal with the raw Unity projects. So this is cleaned up. Now, as far as to getting it into source control, currently the project is located in nope, not there. Libraries, Documents, My Documents, Visual Studio, Projects, and there it is, Design Demo. Now, I could import, as the terminology goes, I could import this into the Google projects. I could right-click on this, go to Tortoise SVN. Oh, yeah, this assumes that you're either on a campus computer or that you have the most recent version of Tortoise SVN installed on your machine. If you don't have Tortoise SVN, you're on your own for figuring out that particular SVN client. But with Tortoise SVN, I can just right-click on the folder, go to Tortoise SVN, and I could do an import. And that works, it's fine. The problem is that when you import a folder or a project into a repository, it does not place the source folder under source control. If I did this, this specific folder right here would not be under source control. I would have to rename it, check it out, and do a whole bunch of fiddling they don't like to mess with. So rather than doing that, messing with this folder here, instead what I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to need the repository checked out anyways onto a location on my desktop. So I am going to check this out onto my C drive. So I am going to go to my source, and I am going to grab this URL. That is as much as the URL as you need. You do not need this part, or this part. That's only if you are doing command line checkouts. When you are doing checkouts through Tortoise SVN, you don't need all this extra stuff. All you need is the URL, the HTTPS. The S is important. And then the project, the source code, the project name, .googlecode.com SVN trunk. That's what you need. I'm going to copy that. Come back over here. I'm going to right click on the C drive. I am going to say SVN checkout. When you want to get a brand new copy of code, you do a checkout. Generally speaking, you do a checkout once. If you're working on school computers, you'll have to do a checkout every time you sit down at the machine because they reset every night. So I'm going to do an SVN checkout. Now, my URL is already in here because I did a little bit of pre-planning. If it's not, do a Control-V to get that pasted in there. And make sure you pay attention to the checkout directory. Most of the time it's intelligent about this, sometimes it's not. Make sure that you are checking this out into either an empty directory or a directory that does not exist, so that way it can create it. You don't want to try to check this out into a directory that already has stuff in it. And we can go ahead and choose to keep all of these defaults. So I'm just going to hit OK. And drag my checkout finished window back over here. And it's going to say, all right, checkout finished. It's going to say, all right, what command did I execute? It updated, completed at revision 1. You need to wait until you see this completed message anytime you do an SVN operation. Checkout, commit, update, any of them, wait until you see this completed. And at revision 1, well, I haven't done any commits yet, so obviously I'm at my first revision of this repository. Now, I have on my C drive here, let me see if I can't get this to refresh to get my icon. There we go. So you see now I've got this green check mark by this folder. That tells me that it's under source control and that it's up to date. And now, depending on your file and folder settings, you might see a .svn folder inside your directory. Leave it alone. If you see that .svn folder, do not mess with it. That has to stay there and untouched. Okay, now that I've got this folder ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to where my project is. Studio, projects, and I'm going to grab a copy of this. Hop back over here to the C drive, go into here, and paste in the folder. Now, at this point, this folder has not been added to source control yet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to right-click on it, Tortoise SVN, and now I've got a new option. I've got an add option now because it knows this folder is contained within a versioned folder. And so it's like, well, it's in a versioned folder. It's not versioned. Maybe they want to add it. So I'm going to select add, get my window back over here, and it's going to pick up recursively everything in here. And interestingly enough, I don't know why it's still picking up the bin folders, because that's what the debug clean was supposed to take care of. So I don't know why it's still picking those up, but I'll leave those alone for now. So it's going to show me everything that's going to add into the project. I'm just going to go ahead and say, yeah, add in the everything. Hit OK. Hit OK. Now, at this point, I've just simply told SVN that, hey, I want this folder versioned. I haven't actually uploaded it yet to the repository. In order to do that, in order to actually make changes to your repository, you have to do a commit. Now you can see my icon has changed to an exclamation point saying, hey, there's non-version stuffed in here. There's stuff, you need to commit this or do an update to undo it. So I'm going to right-click on this, and commit is what you want when you are adding something to the repository. So I'm going to do a commit, get the window back over here. It likes to default to my second monitor. And it's going to show me everything that I'm doing and tell me what am I doing. Well, I'm adding all of this stuff in. So I'm going to hit OK. And now it's going to prompt me for my username and password. Of course, there's the pad. And come over here. Oops. And Google password. And blockouts are a wonderful thing, so you guys can't see that. I'm over here, paste it in. Now, I'm going to save authentication because I don't want to have to go through this every time I commit something on this repository. This is my personal computer. Do not save authentication on the labs on campus. Anybody can walk in, and if you have saved your authentication, that means they have full, unrestricted access to your repository. So do not save authentication. If you're working in the labs, just deal with the aggravation of having to enter in your Google code password every time you want to do something. On your home computers, go nuts. Feel free to save authentication. Oh, right. And your username, you have to use the full StuMail address. See, this is why I didn't rehearse this. So I've got to do rflemon1@jcc.edu. Oops, that is my staff email. Which, interestingly enough, does not work. And there it goes. So yeah, make sure you put in your full email address, your username at stumail.jccc.edu. Okay, and it's done. So we have now completed at revision 2. Since I've made a change, I'm now on the second revision. The revision numbers aren't going to matter much to us, but it's important to keep note of those. These are really great because if you make a series of changes, let's say you sit down, you start working for a couple of days, and the path that you decided to go down just utterly screwed up everything. And you've made changes to 5, 6, 7, maybe a dozen files. Rather than having to go back through and trying to undo all of those changes, which you'll probably forget at least one of them, which will cause some pretty nasty bugs to track down, you can instead say, okay, well, my last good revision number was 17. So you can go back to the repository and say, hey, don't give me the main one, give me revision 17, and start working from there. So it's not really going to be an issue for us, like I said, but that is a very useful feature of these revision numbers. All right, so everything has been checked out now. And if I go to browse on the web page, I can verify this by seeing, okay, here is my trunk, here's my design demo, and here's my solution folders. I can see that everything is here. You can also use the web interface for uploading files. I recommend against it. It's really best just to make sure that you have everything set up properly on the file system. And so here, refresh. Okay, it's not going to refresh this time. The icons do not always behave themselves. So you see, even though the design demo should have something visible, it doesn't. So the icons don't always update right now. See, now it's back to a green arrow, and if I come back, okay, now it's got the green check mark. The icons can be a little bit weird, so don't panic if the icons don't show up correctly immediately. They should show up correctly reasonably quick, but immediate, not so much. All right, so that's how you would get a Visual Studio project in there. What about Unity? Because, well, obviously we're going to be having to work with Unity quite a bit. Okay, so with Unity, it looks like I've got a minor version upgrade to do. Let's get a new project going here. Now, by default, Unity wants to put everything into your Documents folder. You are not required to keep things there. Instead, I can say, you know what, I'm going to browse, I'm going to go to C, and I'm going to go to JCCC game code samples. And in here, I'm going to say Unity SVN demo. Oops, and create folder. So new folder. When you do it this way, you've got to have an empty folder that you can select. So Unity SVN demo, select folder. And just so that I have some stuff in there right away, let's go with the character controller package. It has some good number of scripts in it. So I'm going to hit create. Let Unity do its thing for a moment. Now, the key thing about this is Unity generates a lot of temporary files when it's running. So you cannot do a commit while it's running. Notice I still have Visual Studio up and I still have my design demo program open in it. That's fine. Visual Studio doesn't create a whole bunch of junk while it's running. Just, well, when you build it does, but not while you're just sitting here editing it. Unity has lock files and a bunch of other weird stuff that it has going on while you have the Unity editor open. So to make changes, we've got to get rid of that. So if I come over here, look at standard assets, okay, yep, we got some stuff in here, some scripts, materials, textures. So we got some stuff in here to commit. So I'm going to make sure I save my project. I'm going to go ahead and save scene as well. And now I'm going to close this out so that way we can get this committed. Now, you might think when you're looking at this, you might think, oh, all I need to do is save my assets folder because, I mean, that's where everything is, right? I mean, that's where all my script files are, my character controller, my prefabs, my scene, all of that information is just in assets. Wrong. The library folder contains a lot of metadata, specifically metadata. Without that metadata folder, and without all of this other additional asset information, Unity does not know how to put together assets. So if you just transfer over the assets folder, yes, Unity will still know that there's supposed to be a character controller prefab, but it's not going to understand how to link in all of the different components for that prefab. So you cannot just grab the assets folder. You've got to grab everything, the whole kit and caboodle. So I'm going to go back to my main project level here. And on Unity SVN demo, I'm going to right click. And I am going to go to Tortoise. And I'm going to say add. And I'm just going to let it add everything. Don't try to uncheck anything. Let it add all the weird metadata folders and files. Just let it go nuts. So click OK. All that's going to be marked for adding. It's just going to take a while. There we go. 347 files. Boy. Now, in order to get that updated, again, I'm sorry, not updated, committed, I've got to do a commit. Otherwise, it will not be there. So I'm going to do a right click, SVN commit. Now it's going to have to go through and commit all of these things. Now, while we're waiting for that, I want to talk about update. Update is the opposite of commit. Update is you're saying, okay, repository, have there been any changes since the last time that I did this? And when you're working on a team, that's very important. Or in my case, where you've got, my work is split amongst multiple machines. I've got my home machine, I've got my laptop, and I've got my office machine. It's important that anytime I sit down to do work, the first thing I do is right-click, update. Make sure that I've got the most recent set of code. Otherwise, that can cause problems. Now, update will do a couple of things. If you are missing a file that is the repository says you are supposed to have, and you run an update, it will re-download that file. It's a sort of a really great sort of emergency backup feature. If you're coding and you just utterly screw up a file, get out, delete it, run an update, and you'll get a clean copy of that file back. Now, if you have local changes, in other words, if you've got a file and you have made changes to that, and then somebody else comes along and makes a commit to that same file, the update won't overwrite your file. Instead, what will happen is that when you go to commit to your file, it's going to say, you checked this file out at revision 3, but my current revision on this file is revision 5. I need to check this for conflicts. And it's going to go through and it's going to try and solve the conflict itself. But if it can't, it'll kick the file back to you saying, hey, there's a conflict on these lines here. You need to solve this. Then after you solve it and you recommit it, it's accepted and the revision number gets updated. But the key thing here is that in order to make sure that you have a clean working copy, you should always do an update on a repository before you start working. That's also a good way to keep up to date on the code samples, because if you go and download this repository, which you just can't make changes to it. When you go and download this repository, anytime you want to check to see if there's new sample code, you can just simply run an update on it, and it will work. And at this point, we're going to do a little time skip because, this is... Oh, no, okay, never mind. Completed at revision 3. We don't need to do a time skip. So now it's done. If I come back over here and relook at things, of course, I got to refresh it. F5. If I refresh it, then I will be able to see in here, yep, there it is, Unity SVN demo. You can also use Tortoise to browse a repository. If I do a right-click and go to Tortoise SVN repo browser, that will allow me to browse or look at a repository. And so it's going to take it a moment to load. Okay, and now I can come in here, adjust my size because this is like really kind of weirdly scrunched. And I can go through here now and look at files. Now, how do we remove something from SVN? Because honestly, there's no point in actually having this Unity SVN demo project in here because there's nothing in it. So how do I get that off? Well, one way would be to come into the repository browser and delete it out of here. That would be one option. Another option is on the local file system. I could do a right-click Tortoise SVN delete, and that would delete it and all folders and files underneath it from the repository. And I believe you can also do such management from the browser interface, although honestly I haven't messed with that very much, so I am not sure. So here, let's just take a quick look here to see if we can in fact do that kind of management. No, it looks like we can create and we can upload, but we can't delete from the web interface. Okay, so local file system or the Tortoise SVN browser. Local file system is pretty easy. I just come over here, right-click, Tortoise SVN, delete, and it deletes it. And now, in order for that to take effect on the repository, I do have to go back yet again and do a commit. And notice now it's saying, okay, well, everything's been marked for deleting. Once I do this, this is irreversible. I hit OK, and those files are gone. That's it. You cannot recover them. So make sure you know what you're doing before you delete something off of the repository. So that pretty much covers how to get your projects onto Tortoise SVN. If you have any questions or problems with this, email, contact me on Steam, toss me a line on Gmail chat. And as always, remember, use my personal Gmail chat, not my school Gmail, because I very rarely have my school Gmail open. It's my personal Gmail that I have open, so use the landguard@gmail.com if you wish to get my attention via Gmail chat. And with that, good luck with dealing with SVN.